My name is Chidera, and this is my story. My father was a deacon, an elder, while my mother was a Sunday school teacher in the children's class. They were deeply religious, committed to the things of God in the church, but it was all a facade. Behind closed doors, my family was a ruin. Abuse was our peculiar culture. My father was cruel to my mother, and in turn, she poured her bitterness upon my siblings and me. I had two brothers, DK and Chuk, and I was the only girl. One Sunday after the service, my father got into a heated argument with my mother because he had bitten into a stone while eating. My mother, drunk and defiant, hurled insults back at him. It was the first time I had ever seen her so bold before him. The quarrel escalated until he beat her so badly that she ended up on crutches. During her treatment, his aunt inquired, and my mother confessed that the beatings were because she had refused him intimacy. Instead of defending her, the woman rebuked my mother and told her that once she was healed, she should kneel and beg his forgiveness. The environment was toxic, and I knew I had to get out. I knew I had to escape. It was so suffocating, but how could I escape? Providence intervened when I met my husband in a store. We exchanged numbers, and soon our lives intertwined. I became pregnant, and at 21, shortly after graduating from university, I was married. My father objected not because of my age, but because my husband was from Taraba State and not Igbo. Yet I chose love. My only regret was that I could not take full responsibility for my brothers. Still, my husband agreed to let them visit during the holidays because I could not just imagine leaving them alone to deal with my parents' toxicity. Marriage brought me peace. I was working, building myself, and loved by a man who cherished me. He worked in Ondo while I lived in Lagos, but each weekend he returned, showering me with affection. When our baby arrived, he celebrated us with gifts. Life seemed perfect. But at 7 months, I noticed my son was different. He never babbled, never maintained eye contact. When he visited the hospital, he had cerebral palsy and autism. The diagnosis shattered my rose colored world. My husband grew distant. By the time our son turned 3, my husband rarely came home. The loneliness consumed me. Neighbors avoided my son, or else treated him with a strained kindness that cut me deeper. Caring for him alone was torture. He would not eat, would not speak, would not speak. All he did was drooled, screamed, and threw tantrums that rattled the walls. It was so difficult. My love soared into resentment, and I wanted him gone. Then came the day my husband announced he had won a PhD scholarship in the United States. In 2 months, he would be leaving. I was furious that he had hidden his plans from me, but he consoled me with promises of better opportunities ahead. Before leaving, he spent time with our son, handling his tantrums way better than I could, with so much tenderness that for a moment I felt my heart soften. But once he left, he never returned. No calls, no text, no even his family. Well, when I met them, putting down my thoughts and worries about not hearing from my husband, they told me they too have reached out to him and he has not gotten back to them. And we were all full of excuses at first. But eventually, they abandoned me too. I was left alone with my burden. I could not go back home because I didn't want to deal with my father or my mother. Because as much as my father, he was my father, he would never ever want to see me happy. And I'm sure me going back with an autistic child would bring joy to him. Anyways, I didn't also want to burden people or even my brothers with my own burden. There were moments that I began to pray for death. Well, not mine, but my child's. One day, I watched him crawl toward a naked electrical socket with wet hands. I didn't stop him. I waited, and just as he was about to touch it, the power went out. I felt so overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time. I felt so much guilt and so much anger that the plan did not fall through. Another time, or rather most times, I pinched his nose, time to time, just restrain, just to just let that feeling go out. But then one day, his body went still. Then panic seized me. My son was not breathing. I rushed him to the hospital, and with the same hand I prayed to God for his death, with the same hands I prayed to God to heal my son. I knelt down, praying and begging God to let my son live. That night, I wept and asked God for forgiveness. From then on, I changed. I hired a nanny, bought his medications, took him out in public despite the stares. He was my son, my joy, my peace, my hope. I resolved to dedicate my life to him, doing all that I could just to be the perfect mother. Well, not perfect mother, but to be a good mother, to cherish what I was given. 6 months later, I received a call. Nanny's voice trembled. We are in the hospital. I drove like a mad woman. All thoughts and all worries were just leading to my son. What if something happened to him? Oh God, I feared. When I got to the hospital, she explained that he had been sleeping too long and she tried to wake him up so that he could eat his lunch. But then he was not breathing. Everything was turning blurry. My heartbeat thundered, each step heavier than the last. When the doctor uncovered him, I saw him immediately. The stillness, the emptiness. It was obvious. My son was dead. I could not feel my legs. Darkness swallowed me whole. A scream tore out of me, raw, endless, and deafening. My child, my precious child. The very air abandoned me. But then I wanted him dead, right? And he was dead. This was what I wanted, but not anymore. Was this God's doing? Was this his wrath? His rage towards me? He answered my request by simply taking back his gifts from me. Oh God, have mercy. I cried and I cried and I cried. This is my sad story.